So welcome everybody to Captain's Table. I'm Tony Hall from Navigator Consulting. We specialise in helping to grow recruitment companies, and we've been doing so for the past 22 years. So anything that we can do to help support the growth of your recruitment company, please make contact. And Captain's Table is our industry owners forum, whereby we share a lot of great information. We've also opened it up to senior leaders, and today we're very pleased to have some marketing directors with us, joining us also today at Captain's Table. So thank you very much. And special mention of our sponsors and supporters. And they are JobAdder, who's been with us right since the start, Australia's leading recruitment management system, as you well know. Thank you to everyone there, to Martin, and particularly to Martin and Audrey, who've been great supporters, to APositive, to Cameron and his team. Cash flow finance experts, as you know, and really been helpful and given a lot of input into the industry this year. So thank you to your team. And then DigitPro, Michael and his team down in Melbourne, who are specialist bookkeepers to the recruitment industry. Thanks, Michael. And I hear continually great feedback on your services. We also have Ayers Group, which have just joined us later this year. Ayers Group, as you probably know, are a leading payroll and employment services company for the recruitment industry, and have been really, really helpful on that front. Thank you to Cole and to AJ and the team, and Claire over there. So thank you all very much. And then finally to William Buck, who are a very good accounting firm who have been really working closely to a lot of recruitment companies. They have a good knowledge and understanding of recruitment companies around Australia. So you get top tier accounting expertise with a lot of extra value added. So thanks to everyone on the William Buck team, Cameron, Di and Angela and Lloyd and Andrew and everyone there. So time to get started, and I hope you'll give us a little bit past the hour today. And it's going to be a good session. If you've got your video on, could you please turn it off, and so that we can get a good recording of our two speakers. Now, before I introduce the speakers, we were initially having Kevin Sangster, who's had a family emergency, unfortunately. And at the last minute, I thought, shall we delay, or shall I quickly dig into my black book and bring you two very professional speakers who are very experienced at marketing, professional services marketing and recruitment marketing, so that you're actually going to get two for the price of one. And what we'll also do is, when Kevin's back up to speed, we'll record his session and send you that as well. So you're actually going to get two sessions on this topic for the price of one, and I hope you think that's a good alternative rather than delaying the session to somewhere else. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This is the last session of Captain's Table for the year. It's been a huge year. We've got a really big crowd with us today, so thank you for joining us. And then what I'm going to do is introduce our speakers. First of all, Greg Roworth, who runs Business Flight Path. He is a specialist in professional services marketing. So the reason we're going to get him there is that we want to not just focus on people that know the recruitment industry, although Greg knows it very well, as he's been a previous business owner and used recruitment agencies before. He knows our industry well, but we're going to get some perspective on what professional services companies as a whole are doing. And so welcome, Greg. Great to have you on our session today. And also we've got Chris South from Prominence, who operate internationally now, and they are recruitment marketing specialists. So Chris has got a lot of knowledge. He's got a lot of recruitment companies he already helps. And we're going to work through our agenda of topics today so that we can cover off the topic for you in the best possible way. So if you have got questions, what I'd ask you to do is put them in the chat so that we can get a nice flow of our conversation with Chris and Greg now. And then we will ask them, either Adele or I will ask questions of them when we come to the later end of the presentation. So check mute and check videos off, and let's get into it. Welcome, Greg and Chris. And Greg, I'll start with you. Just a quick introduction of where you've been and what you're doing right now.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Nice to be here. I guess short story is over the past 25 years, I've started, grown and sold 3 professional service firms of my own out of, coming out of an accountancy background originally. And one of the challenges that I had in growing those 3 businesses was, how to attract the best quality clients consistently and predictably. And eventually I managed to crack the code on that and get that happening. And now, having sold my last practice 3 years ago, have focused on working with other professional service firms and helping them attract their premium clients consistently and predictably.
Very good. Thank you very much, Greg. And then over to you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Firstly, and apologies from me, I'm suffering from a severe bout of sore throat at the moment, so I'll do my very best to get through this. So I've been in the recruitment marketing space now for 6 years, I think. Obviously came from recruitment originally. I've worked with recruiters of all walks of life, from startups through to large corporates, and have sort of observed a sort of fairly rapid change, I would say, over that 6-year period of time, from a lot of companies not really doing much to companies really beginning to prioritize marketing and see true value in it. So lots and lots of different examples of work, and also examples of what's working right now compared with what was working sort of 5 or 6 years ago to talk about.
Very good, Chris. And to set up what we're going to talk about today, everybody, recruitment marketing is professional services marketing, and there are some specifics around recruitment marketing, particularly because recruitment companies really have 2 customers, if you like. There's candidates and clients, and obviously there's internal marketing to be able to attract new staff and to retain staff and make staff feel good about the brand that you're marketing for. So it's really quite complex marketing we're talking about here. And I have the pleasure of being linked on LinkedIn to, I don't know, about 2,500 recruiters, and particularly leaders in recruitment companies. So my LinkedIn feed gets to see a lot of what's out there. And as Chris and Greg mentioned to me yesterday, there are limited channels for marketing now, and we're going to talk about that as we go through. But I've seen a very vast range of what is very good quality recruitment marketing, and we'll talk about what that looks like in a minute. And I've seen some stuff that really shouldn't be on LinkedIn, and it really should be on Facebook or more social media. And a lot of people are trying to personalize their marketing on LinkedIn by making it more personal. But one of the things we're going to talk about today is what is professional and what actually is going to help you bring clients to you and candidates, of course, particularly in talent short markets. So with that introduction, we'll go back to go back to Greg, and Greg talk a little bit about the first topic, which is the new age of the influencer and your views on that, and where we're at around influencing.
Yeah, that's a very important topic, and I think mostly it comes about because of the internet and the way buyers have changed their habits since the introduction of the internet. And I think particularly in professional services, and no different in recruitment, most of our clients typically came from referrals, and they're still the best sort of clients, and the best marketing we can do is referral type marketing. But where most people used to go to someone for a recommendation, who do you know who does this? That was probably the most common question that people asked to initiate a referral, and the beneficiaries of that sort of question were us as the suppliers. But since the internet, people don't ask that question so much. In fact, I saw a statistic in a recent research report that the number of people who actually ask for a recommendation now has dropped to 27%. So what's happened to all the people who have stopped asking other people for recommendations? Well, what they're doing is asking Google, and the outcome of that is that people are going to Google and asking, putting in the search terms, for recruitment agencies or recruitment consultants, or how do I get the best candidates So a whole lot of different questions that they might put in, but instead of asking their friends, Google is now the easy option. So what that means is if you're not showing up on Google or any of the search engines or on LinkedIn or whatever avenue people are finding their information to do their research now, your chances of being in the market or getting a good hearing are really diminished. So with the age of the influencer, you have to become the influencer in the process, because there's such a thing as a buyer's journey. People go through a series of stages where they start off with, first of all, identifying a problem. First thing may be that we're really busy. We probably need to recruit some more people, and they don't really have a solution to how they're going to do that. But they start then to search for options. Should we do this ourselves? Should we find someone else to do it for us? And so they start their search online, and then they start to narrow down some options. And it might be, well, I think getting someone else to do this for us might be the best option. Who's out there? Who's the best recruiter that we can get? And so then they start to refine their search and narrow down some options and get advice. By the time someone actually gets on the phone and calls you, or gets on the internet and fills in a form on your website, they've done a lot of that research already. So what used to happen in the past with a recommendation and then get on the phone and call someone and then find out from a salesperson or the professional, how do we do this? So much of that is done online now. So if you're not showing up online and influencing people's buying decisions through that buyer's journey, you're really missing out on huge opportunities. So the opportunity now is to actually be the influencer online, to be what I call the authority in the market, where your opinions, your advice and support for people going through that buyer's journey actually provides them with huge value, and they see you as the authority or the expert in your field and as the one to call.
Very good, Greg. Thank you very much. Really good summary of the age of the influencer. Chris, over to you from your perspective, please.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because quite often when I'm speaking to recruitment agencies, we get the comment back that, particularly around clients, that clients already have relationships with recruitment agencies. So why does brand, why does marketing matter? Because clients have the relationships, they're going to go to their existing relationships. But what we're finding is when we do have clients that have a really strong brand, there are still their end clients, the employers, that are looking for new agencies or different agencies to work with. So you get a lot of scenarios where you've got an employer who's maybe got 2 people on their panel that aren't delivering. So they're, who else could assist me with this assignment? Or they've suddenly got an international role and their recruiters they're working with are perceived to only deal with local roles or something of that nature. So there's a lot of instances where you think that employers are not going to go looking for a referral or a new service, but actually they are. And we see this day in, day out with the marketing that we run, is that we do get client leads coming in. And from a candidate perspective, definitely, probably over the last 10 years, good quality candidates aren't necessarily just going to job boards and hitting apply. They're going, who's that recruitment agency that specializes in my sector? Particularly if you've got contractors. Who deals in technology contractors in Sydney? Who's working in this space? And they're calling up the agency or the individual recruiter and saying, hey, I'm a Java developer. I've heard about you or heard good things about you. What roles have you got? So there's been an ongoing change in consumer behavior. I mean, I used to talk about that 5 years ago, but it's really spiraled over the last few years, which makes it all the more important for that influencer side of things. And I think when we're talking influencer, it's twofold. We're not just talking the individual, we're also talking the agency. Your agency, the more specialized you are, the more you can be seen as an influencer as a business in that space. And then the individual recruiter, I mean, I think for generalist recruiters, everything we're talking about here is really, really hard. Or you could be You could just be known for being really good at recruitment in general, maybe really good at recruiting in a certain geography. Trying to be a jack of all trades is really challenging. But if you are specialist, then there's lots of opportunities and easy ways to get yourself known in that particular space. I mean, there's the obvious things like belonging to associations, getting involved in events, sponsoring relevant Zoom meetings or webinars and those things that are happening. So we're not just talking about having to post lots of content on social media and say, hey, I'm in accounting. There's lots of other ways to raise your profile as an influencer in the areas you actually operate.
Yeah, no, very good. Thanks, Chris. And I think part of that obviously is putting content out there that is really relevant to the areas that you're recruiting in, obviously, that's useful and topical.
I can just add something, Tony.
Yeah.
I think Chris is very accurate in his need for people to be specialising and not to be a generalist. And I think when we look at, influencing and advising people, it's not just about the core topic, not just how do I find the best candidate or, how do I recruit someone, but it's a much broader scope of that, beyond that, into really identifying specific problems within the industry itself. So, who does certain aspects really, really well and who's average or worse, and really being able to address those problems with the market as well. So being a specialist doesn't mean you're just, focusing on a particular industry or a particular profession, but being a specialist in providing services in a specific way, or, providing your service while you're, completing the activities involved in a way that really suits some particular part of the market more than others. So really identifying specific parts of the market or segments of the market where you can add value that they're looking for that maybe aren't really relevant to other parts of the market.
Agreed.
No, very good. All right, thanks, Greg. Now, to keep rolling forward, because we've got a lot to cover today, and we want to give everybody as many ideas as we possibly can, because we've got people from all different backgrounds and level of knowledge on the whole recruitment marketing piece. But let's talk about face-to-face relationships now, and how with the COVID lockdowns and social distancing and planes not flying, how we've really adjusted to building relationships not face-to-face using technology such as Zoom. And for Captain's Table, it's actually been a blessing in some ways that we were able to open up Captain's Table to a much broader audience now around the whole of Australia and even into New Zealand. And it's actually brought our community closer. And it also means that if people can't make it, we've got a recording to send, for example, which was very hard to do when we're in person. Yes, there's not that networking aspect to it, but we're still getting, hopefully, the job done with high quality content. And I wonder whether that's the same sort of approach and response that's happening for recruitment marketers as well. So, Chris, I'll start with you on this one. Face-to-face relationships not going to come back in a hurry. What's your view on what the alternatives are?
I've got a point here which might go against the flow a little bit, but if I were a recruiter and I was looking for an opportunity right now, I would be thinking about face-to-face events. Having been in New Zealand during the lockdown period, and as we've come out of it, I've actually had the privilege of going to some physical events over the last month or so, hosted both in the recruitment sector and also in the tech sector. And the attendance rate has been through the roof, so much so they couldn't take any more people, couldn't get any more people in the rooms. So as I see it right now in the lead up to Christmas and also going into the new year, I think there's an absolute opportunity to start looking at, okay, what events can we host? What can we sponsor before everyone else starts getting back into the flow of things? Because if you could be the first to put together a series or launch something that's going to happen, that's going to give you a major advantage. And I think whilst face-to-face is perhaps changing, there is still going to be an absolute demand for in-person events, and people have got they want to see people again. They want those human connections. So that's my first point. Second point on the topic, I feel that the most important thing as we move away for recruitment agency directors is to empower your recruiters. and it's always been a bit of a, I guess, a choice of two evils here. Do we focus our branding on our own recruitment agency, which is the IP we own, and then we're going to accept that recruiters are going to, there's going to be turnover and they'll leave, so we won't empower those guys too much, or we won't support those guys too much? Or do we actually invest? Do we support them to be the best they can be? And I think we are seeing more and more recruiters or recruitment agencies empowering their recruitment teams. And to that note, one of my absolute favorite things that I've seen happening of recent is recruitment agencies actually starting to use scheduling tools for social media, where they're building large repositories of content that is not just content that's valid today, but content that's going to be valid over the next 6 months. Reports, blogs, guides, articles, all with copy and imagery and everything all together in one place that the recruiters can then simply log into, and they can edit and share that content directly onto their own social channels. So not just the recruitment agencies empowering their recruiters, but also the recruitment agencies actually supporting them to do more with their brand. And I think we're going to see more of that as we go forward.
No, very good, Chris. Some really good ideas. And Greg, your view on face-to-face and whether we should be going back to it sooner rather than later, or how to increase it going forward, and what's your view?
Yeah,
please?
well, living in Melbourne and being a victim of probably the longest lockdown in the history of the world, we have got used to working online, and most of the world has done that. In fact, I saw a report from McKinsey that came out recently post-COVID, where they stated that 96% of the people in selling had actually got to see this type of interaction as the norm, and a survey said that 83% of those companies would see that they would continue to operate in the same way going forward. So there's a bit of a shift then back to the face-to-face selling. And I think Chris is right that where events and opportunities to meet people face to face, then that's where a lot of people will go. But I think people will be much more selective about which events they go to face to face, because the advantages of having the online interactions has been this, the amount of time we've saved not having to travel, and whether that's traveling around the block or around the world, that time savings is a huge factor and means that we can all be much more productive. So yeah, I think that this type of interaction, and particularly in the selling process, and I'm welcoming that myself. Being involved in sales sessions, quite regularly each week. That now I'm not traveling an hour into the city for an hour meeting and an hour back home. I can do my hour sales process online over Zoom and do 3 in the time that I might have taken for 1 before. So I think it's here to stay.
It's a valid point, Greg. And like one of the things I was thinking when I was putting together content for this session is, I wonder whether the end clients, the employers, are going to be less inclined to accept in-person meeting requests. I mean, the recruiters are going to be saying, hey, can I come and see you? But a client's got to take out a full hour of their invite. They've got to do a lot of pleasantries and things, whereas they know they could probably do a half an hour Zoom meeting and fit two things in. So I suspect there'll be quite a bit more pushback to booking meetings. And so that's going to be a problem for recruitment agencies and recruiters, because how do you get your brand in front of these people? How do you make up for that lost face time where you can't go and see them? And I think that's where you've got to start thinking of other solutions to push your messaging to them.
Yeah, totally.
No, for sure. So it's a balancing act. And what I've heard from some owners of recruitment companies is that if they had really strong relationships that they had built previously face-to-face, then the continuance of doing business with them was fine. It's the new business phase that's going to, as recruitment companies expand, that are going to require some extra effort to build that all-important relationship where people want to transact, I
Yeah,
guess.
and I think to that point,
So,
sorry, Tony, but I think, when you go to a face-to-face meeting, you don't necessarily need, particularly if you're an experienced recruiter, you don't need an iPad with lots of documentation to show people slides and that sort of thing. You can talk to all of those points, but when you're running a Zoom intro, that's something else you've got to think of, is what are you arming your recruiters with? Because on a Zoom call, it's quite hard to do what you would normally do in person. So you've actually got to give them some content. Hey, here's some information about us, or something they can share on their screen. So just another thing to take into consideration.
I think another point.
Well, thank you.
Another point there, Tony, is that we see the sales process as a one-off event, but I think what's happening with marketing, and something we're going to get to in this discussion as well, is that the sales call, if you like, should be the end result of a whole process of educating your clients or potential clients and informing them and adding value along the way. And so, the actual sales meeting, I think, is less important in the new structure or new methodology than it used to be, where typically basically all the heavy lifting was done in a sales meeting, where you had to get your brand recognition across, build trust, develop a convincing case to use you, and and make the sale. So I think that scenario we can break down over a series of steps, which obviously we'll talk about later in this discussion as well.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. That does take us into the next topic really nicely, and building trust online and how to do that. The do's and the don't do's, and building that quality of brand and ability to provide great service and articulate the offering that a recruitment business might have, so that the sale process is actually much easier, because the more sophisticated buyer has already done their research, right? Greg, do you want to quickly talk on that, lead back into that, and then over to Chris on the topic?
Yeah, sure. What I see online is a lot of people getting it wrong, and most people have trusted marketing consultants with how to set up their website and how to have an effective website. But unfortunately, I think marketing consultants haven't really understood professional services and the particular nuances around that. I mean, I'm obviously present company accepted here. We've spoken to Chris and we're in agreement on this. So I'm not, there are some smart marketers out there who actually understand the new world, but a lot of the marketers, really don't understand professional services marketing. So what we see on websites is typically, a list of services that we offer, and maybe, experience and credentials to support that. And we see that as a way of building trust. But unfortunately, we don't actually get to establish trust with anyone unless we've covered a couple of steps off first. And the first one of those is actually what I call relevance. We have to be relevant to someone to get their attention. The hardest thing online, I'm sure Chris will agree with this, the hardest thing in marketing is to get someone's attention. And you don't get attention unless you're relevant first. So, rather than a list of services that you're offering, you need to be focused on what is the specific problem that you solve and who do you solve that for. So unless, someone comes to your website and says, oh, this is relevant to me, I better pay more attention, and then create a connection first. So you've got to create a connection with them. So they've got to see, oh, this really is important for me to read. Once they get engaged in the content on the website, then you can start to establish trust. So I think most companies are missing those first two steps in the process, and they're really actually trying to establish trust by talking about their value to the market, which actually is more relevant after trust. But by missing those first two steps of relevance and connection, we don't actually get a chance to establish trust. So I think in the online world, we need to build a system into our marketing that, first of all, does get people's attention by being relevant to their problem they have, and identifying who it is we serve before we talk about what we do to serve them, and then building in the assets or the collateral to establish relevance, connection, and trust along the way.
Yeah, and I think if I talk to the end of that journey that you're talking about there, the bit that seems to be missed by a lot of recruitment firms is we've just built this swanky new website. We put it live, we've got some nice pictures on there, we spent a bit of time on the copy, but we're not reinforcing the trust element. We're not trying to, or taking the user into consideration. The user's gone to the site, and they're probably going to 2 or 3 other sites. The job of the site is to actually get that user to have enough trust to take action, to either make a phone call or send an email or something of that nature. And like some of the cardinal sins we see is, we've got a page, we talk about how great we are in the services we can offer, but there's no obvious phone number. The form isn't customized to fit the action that's actually required on that page. So if you're on a page where you want an employer to get in touch to register a vacancy, it's rare that an employer will fill in a form to register a vacancy. They might do, so it's worth having a form, but you most definitely need a phone number there, so they've got a clear way to contact you. But I think more than that, you've got to work on encouraging them to get to that point, to take that action. So you need to reinforce, we are experts at what we do. We can solve your problem. And the best way I've seen to do that is to provide evidence of someone else who's similar to them having that problem solved. So anyone that knows me knows I'm a massive cynic of video. I think it's really expensive, and the results you get back are somewhat limited. This is probably one of those really big exceptions, and that is if you can capture a couple of your clients talking about a problem you've solved for them. So maybe you recruited a high volume of roles in a very short period of time, or you did an executive assignment and did it particularly effectively. If you can get them walking through your process and what was unique about you and why you did that, although the prospect, the person visiting the website, might only watch 10 seconds of that video, if they see who the person is and they hear a couple of lines of them talking positively about you, you've reinforced, you've told them, hey, this person trusts me, which is probably enough to convince them to take action and contact you over the 2 or 3 other recruitment agencies out there. The other thing I would add to that is, from a consumer behavior perspective, these days we are all looking to third-party tools. And I think, Greg, you mentioned this earlier, it's Trustpilot, it's Google, it's Facebook. We're looking for reviews. We want to see what other people have said about the business, because we're not necessarily asking our friend in the pub anymore, who's a good recruiter, who should I use? We're running on Google. So we're looking to reinforce the fact that our decision is a good decision, because we don't want to be made to look silly with what we're doing. So from that perspective, obviously having written testimonials are important, but also if someone is running a search from Google, you've got to make sure your reviews, your actual reviews showing up when someone's running that search, are positive. And we were talking about this offline yesterday. There is no getting away from the fact that most businesses at some stage in their life will get a negative review. It happens. You get someone that just hasn't had a good experience. It's going to go through. So you've got to have a process in your business to be able to get positive reviews happening automatically. And we're not talking about spam emailing your whole database saying, hey, review us on Google. That's not a good way to do it. And I think it's actually against their terms. But what I would encourage you to do is build a process, ideally automate this process, so that if someone has a good experience and they give you a positive review internally with your internal satisfaction surveys, you can transfer that and you can say, hey, thank you very much for that. Would you mind taking that review and putting it onto Google? So for most of our clients, not all of them, but most, we have that process in play. And every month we're getting 1 or 2 positive Google reviews or Facebook reviews or whatever our outcome is coming through. And we can then take those reviews, we can market those reviews and talk about how great other people say we are, which is better than saying we're great ourselves, and obviously reinforce the fact that we are good at our job in the first place.
No, very good. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Greg, on that topic. And websites is something that we want to talk about more before we go into the inbound sales methodology, which is part of the topic of what we're talking about today. But when you look at recruitment websites, and I encourage everybody to do this, go and look at recruitment websites, because you'll see the good, the bad, and the ugly out there. And obviously not everyone has the resources to get really, really good stuff happening. But with the technology available today, prices of development and do-it-yourself development's gone down quite substantially. Can you both comment, please, on company websites? The bare minimum that should be there. And you've mentioned content, and obviously content. The saying used to be content is king, more so than ever now. And I really liked, Chris, your idea on having a repository of resources, not only for your clients and your candidates, but your staff to use in their sales and marketing efforts. But if you can talk about the website being now, with limited channels available, being that central hub for marketing.
Yeah, well, that's a key element of a website. Is so important in your marketing, and most people will do a Google search for you or go directly to your website and hope to see something of value there. The important thing with the website, though, is it has to add value in the process. And what people are looking for on a website is to answer their questions. People come to a website because they have certain questions. And I think, as I said earlier, most websites, the way they're designed and produced at the moment, actually miss that the key element of answering the specific questions that their viewers might have. So instead of being like a cookie cutter, I've done several experiments on this over the years of choosing a particular industry in presentations I've made. And I go to a website and, well, let's look on Google and look up the websites for recruiters in Melbourne or wherever you are, and they all look the same. You could change the name of the company, but every website is virtually identical. So how do you differentiate yourself if your website looks the same as all of your competitors? And the way that you need to do that is to actually know what are the questions that people are asking when they come to your website, and make sure that on your website you're answering those questions. And I think there are 5, so if I can go through those pretty quickly. Now, those 5 questions are, firstly, why should I pay attention? Why should I actually go beyond? And most websites have 3 seconds or less now to capture someone's attention. Second question is, can you or your service help? So they're looking for specific answers related to them. Third one is, well, how does this work? If I engage your services, how would we work together? How would it work? Then why should I trust you? And that, again, the trust question, and not before all those first 3 questions are answered, to find the relevance. And then how is this different? So if you make sure your website's designed to answer those specific questions, I think you have much greater ability then to meet the needs of the consumer or your buyer, your clients in the process, and build that level of trust and build that level of differentiation as well, to say, oh, this particular company seems to meet my needs better than anyone else. I need to get in touch with them. So I think that's probably covered all of the briefs on that. There was one other point, might come back to me later, but I'll let Chris answer from here.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Greg. I agree with all of those. I think I come at it from a slightly different angle. I mean, we see a lot of websites going live. We see the good, the bad, and the ugly, as I'm sure you do. And I think historically, recruitment's been very centered around one channel for marketing, and that's been LinkedIn. It's the obvious go-to. And there hasn't been an invention of 10 new channels. We often get asked, hey, what's a new channel we should focus on? Like, look, there aren't any. That's the reality. It's the same group of channels, and it's how we use them that's changing. But LinkedIn, in terms of its dominance, from a marketing perspective isn't as dominant as it used to be. It's still very, very important, but there are other channels that you need to be utilizing. And towards the end of this session, I'm going to talk a bit more about what you can do with Google. But that means that your website as a center is even more important. It's really great having a really strong LinkedIn page with 20,000 followers, but it's not going to help you Google marketing because you can't drive your Google ads to LinkedIn. So I think there's got to be a renewed focus on website. Hey, this needs to be the center, and any activity, even if you do it on LinkedIn, needs to pull through to your website. And there's a couple of things I would do as a business owner right now just to have a look at my website and check things are working. We've already spoken about user experience. Greg, you've talked a lot about, actually, does it talk to the key points there of a buyer, what they're actually looking for. But I would be looking, have we set up our Google Analytics? Have we set up goals so that we know, is this actually working? We've put this messaging in, we think this is what people want to see and hear, but is it actually working? Are we able to track that? So that's a really important piece. But also, it is possible these days still to get high up on Google search. And we spoke about earlier how, people are still going to Google to look for service providers. Well, it's going to be very hard for you to win that battle if you can't be found. And Tony rightfully made this point when we were talking the other day. He said, well, you just can't compete if you want to be number one for a recruitment agency these days because it's Hayes, Michael Page, and all those guys at the top. And yeah, that's very, very hard. And if you looked at that and said, I want to be number one there, you probably can't. But if you say, hey, I want to be number one for accounting recruitment in Melbourne, that's a lot more of an achievable goal, because what you've done is you've gone very specialist in your focus. And that means that there's less competition. And if you sort your website out correctly, over time, you can actually get into that position. So it is very possible for most recruitment agencies to be high from a Google search perspective for their core service offerings. Obviously, if you recruit lots of different things, you need to pick the battles that you're going to win. So we work with a lot of technology recruitment agencies, and they want to be number one for technology recruitment agency. You can still be on the first page for that. But when I start having these conversations, it's, okay, what do you do most of your business in? Where's the future of your business coming from? And they might say, hey, I think Salesforce, or I think MuleSoft, or any number of technology platforms. So we focus, okay, well, if I'm a hiring manager and I'm looking for a Salesforce professional, then there could be good merit in building an SEO campaign and gearing the website up in part to be focused for Salesforce, because there's a really good chance that we can get pretty high there. So there's some good organic free wins that you can get from a website perspective if you pay attention to SEO.
Okay, on that then, Chris, one of the questions that's come through from Richard is you get to see a lot of recruitment websites, and there's some really good ones out there, and you mentioned a couple to me yesterday. And can you share with everybody some of the, I guess, benchmarks that everyone should be aspiring to?
Yeah, I think that's relatively easy to do. And I just saw Audrey fire a comment through there, and I agree with her completely. 6 Degrees is a pretty good website. They seem to have things well optimized. I always look to the guys at Talent, and I think we might have someone on the phone from them, on the Zoom meeting from them today, but they do particularly well, particularly from sort of a user experience perspective, but also really differentiating the brand. And then from there, you've really got to look at People to People's another one that are in a pretty good space. But look, there's a number of smaller businesses that are really, really strong. One in Sydney, Richard Lloyd Accounting Recruitment. They are a client of ours, so that they have done a lot of work over time to focus. But if you Google Accounting Recruitment Sydney, they're nearly always number one.
What are they called?
Richard Lloyd in Sydney.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but then look to the big guys. I mean, we were discussing yesterday that the Hayes website is perhaps not as good as we would like to see from a market leading business. But that, there's still some good things on there. But some of the other big guys are doing good things. And generally, when I'm looking from our marketing perspective, I look overseas and I look to the States and I think, okay, what are Adecco doing in America? What are Manpower doing in the States? So don't limit what your inspiration to the domestic market. And also, I think Greg's probably going to touch on this, don't limit your inspiration to recruitment, because then you're only taking ideas from your competitors. actually think, okay, what's going on with you know, a leading shoe retailer or an accounting firm I like. There's an accounting firm here in New Zealand that does some spectacular marketing because they've decided to focus on, sorry, it's not accounting, legal for startups. And they're dominating that niche and doing a really, really good job. And I keep an eye on what they do and how they do it. And I try and translate some of that into the recruitment sphere. But yeah, if someone would like a list of websites, I've got a handful that I look to fairly regularly that I can most definitely share.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you, Chris. Greg, did you want to add any websites in the professional services sector that you really liked, and without going too much detail here?
No, I think Chris has probably covered the relevant ones in the recruitment space. And to be honest, I haven't found a lot of good websites in the professional services space to recommend. So.
Yeah, well, that's telling in itself, but it's also a great opportunity, isn't it? And that brings us to the next discussion on channels. And Chris mentioned there are limited marketing channels these days. In the old days, we had, gosh, I don't know, we had flyers, we had telemarketing, we had TV, we had billboards. I mean, the list went on and on and on, and it was quite difficult to determine what the mix was for your audience and your budget. And for recruitment, really, a lot of it's come down to LinkedIn and Google. So my first question quickly to Chris is Google Ads. I see some recruitment companies do invest in Google Ads. And I just wanted to flag that for the next one, which is around return on investment. And we'll get into that. But before we do, I want to quickly talk about LinkedIn. We use the expression good, bad, and the ugly, and there's a lot of content on there that really shouldn't be on there. But I really want the opinion of you both on using LinkedIn as a marketing channel, please, and how to use it effectively.
Well, you go, Chris. I've got to.
All right. Well, I've got a permanent frog in my throat at the moment, so that's two of us. But yeah, I mean, LinkedIn's changed. That's the first reality. And I know that definitely I'm of the opinion there is too much rubbish going on there, but I know why LinkedIn's pushed it that direction, because that's what LinkedIn's biggest problem all the time has been, getting people to come back to the platform. If you're looking for work, yes, you go to the platform. If you're a salesperson, yes, you go to the platform. If you're not either of those two audiences, there's not there hasn't historically been a great amount of, or great reason to really go there in the first place. So LinkedIn's tried to make themselves more of an accessible everyday platform with content, a lot of the learning modules and that side of things in there. So there's more reason for people to go on there and engage, which I support. But at the same time, it means it's getting a little bit more like Facebook. And I think the challenge for a lot of people is you start being active on LinkedIn and you might get lucky where you put a post out that is, I guess, a little bit different from the normal, or a little bit, a couple of pictures of cats or something like that. And it gets 2 million likes. And you think, oh, this is the way LinkedIn works. And it's sort of natural to continue that progression. I know I've done it. It's logical, but it's the quality of that and what you want to be known for. I think there is absolutely no beating when it comes to LinkedIn marketing consistency and just ensuring what you're doing is good. So do what you do well and do it on a regular time frame. That will be any day of the week, one post which is really, really spam driven or something of that nature. So you've got to be careful what you go for. Yeah,
totally agree with that summary, Chris. And consistency is critical on LinkedIn. But what I see, and everyone's been told, you've got to produce content. We've got to put content out there. But that has become so overdone. I think we're actually overwhelmed with content. There's too much to consume. So the only way to actually get attention again is to have a different style of content. And so you need to perhaps do a bit of research and look at what are people putting out as content on LinkedIn as the main marketing channel. And look at how much engagement they're getting. And, there's the cat videos that get a lot of engagement, but they're not getting any real authority in terms of, well, we need to use that person as a recruiting agent because they've got the nicest cat video. That doesn't work. But what I see is that you need to produce authority content, and that is about shifting people's opinions. So it's addressing problems they had, addressing beliefs they have, and using your content to shift their opinion, to see things in a different way. When you can do that, you can influence how they think through that buyer's journey. And I think understanding the buyer's journey is really critical here, because people don't just make snap decisions, particularly the sort of clients, excuse me, the sort of clients you want are the larger clients that are going to give you continuous work. So they're usually larger firms that are more sophisticated and take a longer time over their buying decisions. So it's about building relationships with those clients through content initially, but through that type of authority content that gets them to pay attention and take notice and say, wow, that's a different way of looking at this. I need to know more. And when you build a strategy throughout your marketing process, it needs to be more like a courtship process than a seduction process, in my experience. And a lot of marketing is about seduction. It's about that quick attraction, make a quick decision, and maybe regret it in the morning. With a sophisticated marketing approach that I propose for professional service firms, it's about building relationships over time. And that comes about by having that authority content there where people pay attention. And one of the adages about LinkedIn is use LinkedIn to engage with people on LinkedIn, but take them off LinkedIn. So you want to take people from LinkedIn where they might encounter your content first, but because of the quality of that content, you should be my purpose for putting content on LinkedIn is to get them to say, that's interesting. I wonder what else he's got to say. And where can I find that? And when you get that reaction, they will then go to your website or go to Google to find more about you and what you've got to say. And they'll probably end up on your website or on your blog where there's more content providing more value at a higher level. And if you build your marketing system in the right way, where you're escalating that attention, they become raving fans before they even become clients. So it's about building a relationship online through your content, and a different type of content, as I say, authority content that really addresses the specific needs of your buyers. And as we've said in the title here, or Kevin said originally, it's not about you, it's about them. So everything on your marketing has to really focus on your clients' needs first, really engage with them before they have any interest in you. So when you're putting out content, make sure it's all about them and their needs first, so that they start to build trust and see your authority, see your understanding of their situation and how their problems are going to be solved, before you start making assertions about yourself, about how good your firm is or about how much experience you have. None of that matters until later.
Yeah, Greg. Just one point on that, Tony, if I may. I know time's an issue here, but
on this topic. Go ahead.
We, as a business, have most definitely noticed a trend that supports everything Greg just said. And when we first started social media, we were putting a lot of content out, just general news and just to be on social media. And you do still need a degree of that. You need to show that your company exists and is active and hasn't suddenly died and fallen off a cliff. But our time now, whenever we're speaking to a client, is not how many bits of content we're going to put out on social media in a week. Those sort of conversations are gone. And if there's agencies still saying we're going to do 6 a week or whatever, that's not relevant. It's the quality, and it's what are you going to be putting out there. So I would far rather nothing for 2 weeks, and then one big piece of content, a lead generation guide that you produce is really, really valuable and helpful to that audience that they're going to want to download and engage and remember, rather than wasting someone in your team's time finding content, posting content that is just not worth the effort. So consistency is really important, but high frequency content is not required anymore. If you've got it and it's good, put it out. If you haven't, don't, and work on a strategy to produce good content. That is so important now.
Chris, on that, a question came through on that. A lot of recruitment agencies are putting a lot of content out there, and it'll be about anniversaries of staff and new staff joining, and hey, here's a lunch that we had out on a boat, and it's all about them, which goes against the grain of the advice that we're hearing from both of you, that the content's got to be about your target audience. What advice do you have if there was a big change of the way recruiters do market themselves to maybe work towards more quality, not quantity, that is not about them? And what are you seeing on that particular front?
It's a really good question, but the question, or I think you said there, who's the audience? Well, this is the one weird nuances about recruitment, right? We have three audiences. We have candidates, we have clients, but we're also always trying to attract recruiters to join our business. So the photos, the anniversaries and that side of things is not necessarily geared up for clients and candidates. It's geared more to show the lifeblood behind the business itself. Do we overdo that? Yeah, I've been guilty of that numerous times. You get into a process, you can't just post one person's anniversary, you've got to post everyone's, and you've got to have a rule that, hey, the 1 year anniversaries aren't so important as maybe we'll just do the 5 and the 10 year. So I think you've got to find a balance, and what sort of message does the whole recruitment team lounging around on a boat in Sydney Harbour portray to your client audience? Yeah, that's slightly questionable, but it may well appeal to the recruiters you're trying to bring in. So there is definitely still a space for that type of content, and that's why LinkedIn has careers pages, so you can put that content out there. Not that I'm a big advocate of those, but I think when you are posting that sort of content, what's important is that you make it clear who the intended audience is. Because if I'm an end client and I'm seeing the post of the team on the boat, if it's written correctly, I can go, oh, that's not for me, and skim on and move on to the next thing. I mean, I think they accept that we live in a sales culture, and there is a part of that anyway. So again, balance. But if your feed is just full of photos about your team, it's probably not right. And that's content for the sake of content, and there's a change needed there.
No, very good. And look, Greg, I might ask you quickly on that, because we're going to finish up with the last question in a minute. But we're covering questions as we go, and Bob Olivier sent a really good question, which is really what you just covered then, Chris, that you do have different audiences, and you've got to make it really, really clear who you're talking to and what social media platforms Jeremy has just said. Using the right social media platform, or media platform, we should really call it, for the target audience and the messages that you're putting through. And, what should you really be doing? And this is a big topic in itself about which platforms to use. And we probably don't have time, but if you both want to really quickly comment on platforms to use, return on investment, and then we need to finish up on the 3 things that you recommend that people should make sure they are implementing right away.
If I could just add to Chris's point before moving on, I think the type of content is important in terms of the development of the relationship as well. So the timing of the type of content is critical. And I'm very much a believer in building relationships with our clients. So if you went up to someone in a bar and met them for the first time, just started talking all about yourself, it's the biggest put off in the world. But if you show interest in them first, and then over time you get their phone number, follow up, you have a number of different sessions, eventually they're going to say, well, what about you? And then is the appropriate time to talk about yourself. The same applies in building relationships with our clients, is that there's a time and a place for the information about you. So when you build that into a specific system that is predictable, you know when to deliver that sort of content. So LinkedIn is not the right platform for, the boat parties and all of that sort of thing, which is all about you. That comes further in the relationship. For me, LinkedIn is really the main platform, although Facebook is relevant as well, and you can use Facebook. I'm not too much into other platforms, but for me, I would just be focusing on LinkedIn as a recruiter. LinkedIn is where your audience is, or your employer's audience is, particularly, and putting out content that's relevant to entering that conversation phase of a relationship, and making sure it's relevant to the client and their problem first. So other than that, Chris may be more aware of other platforms than I am, but I think that timing of when you deliver content through the relationship is a critical part of the process.
Yeah, just to talk to platforms briefly. I mean, you're right. LinkedIn is the main channel, but you're up against a lot of noise there. So if we're talking organic, i.e. where you're going to get free leads from, and nothing's free, but LinkedIn's probably the only place. There is very, very little value unless you're true blue collar in posting lots of content to Facebook again or Instagram. It's fine to do it from an employment branding perspective, or it's not hard to do it concurrently with LinkedIn. If you're blue collar, then there's a difference there. Then Facebook definitely has a space. But I was running some training yesterday or the day before, and we were speaking to the whole team of recruiters about how we were going to do some paid advertising on LinkedIn, on Facebook and Instagram. And we actually do paid advertising on Snapchat for our blue collar clients. So there are other channels from a paid perspective. And they were saying, well, we shouldn't be doing paid ads on Facebook and Instagram. And my argument was, well, on LinkedIn, it can cost us $100 a click. On Facebook, it could be $10 a click. It's still the same people. The only difference is you're capturing them at a different time. So, it's not during business hours. You might have a hiring manager who's at home, maybe they're English, so they've got family back in the UK and they're on Instagram just seeing what their family are doing in the UK, creating my own scenario here. But they're using Instagram for some reason that's non-work related, and they stumble across a guide to ensuring that your staff remain in your company for an extra 6 months or something of that nature. They're quite likely to click that, whether they read it on their own time or whether they save for later. They've seen your brand, they've engaged with it. So there are more channels available, but you have to pay for them. And if I may, I know Tony said to go into our sort of favorite things at the moment. The most significant one I've been working with for the last year and a half is Google Custom Intent. So you've got Google Search, which works for some industries, medical, education, blue collar, works really, really well. It can work in some of the more white collar areas, but mainly client focused. And then you've got the Google Display Network, where you could show your brand to people across any number of websites wherever Google's got ads embedded. I mean, it can go in all the spam areas as well, but it can go on some high quality sites, news sites and that sort of thing. But with Google Custom Intent, you used to only be able to target people based on their demographics. Are they in their mid-20s? Are they male, female, that sort of thing. These days, you can actually target based on their previous search behavior. So you could say, well, everyone that's searched for accounting recruitment agency in the last month, I want to show my ads to. There's a high probability they're relevant to you. Even better than that, you can say everybody that's visited Seek, or everybody that's visited Indeed and this particular section on Seek or Indeed, or everyone that's visited your competitors or the corporates, particular parts of a corporate website. So you can put them into an audience, and then your ads are being shown to those people. So it's doing your BD for you. You know that audience is pretty much spot on for you because they're engaging with sites that are very, very relevant to what you do. And then you're showing your content to them. The same way you could target it to, the journals and the news publications that these people are likely reading. And that way you're building an audience bucket there. My other favorite, and I'll stop talking in a second, is you can get your existing database, so your existing candidates and clients, and you can export them and you can load them into Facebook, and you can retarget that existing audience. So you can take all your clients that you haven't spoken to in 6 months, export them, put them into Facebook, and target them with your brand message and calls to action and content. Or you can use Facebook Smarts, which is how all the corporate world are using Facebook, and actually build lookalike audiences. So you said, well, I've got this group of people that I know are right. Facebook says, well, I'm going to match it to this group of people that match the similarities in profile. So you're building a whole new audience of people you can push your brand to. And for me, that's been really, really powerful in terms of amplifying brand presence with core audiences. You have to pay for it. It's not that significantly expensive, but really powerful channel.
Really good, Chris. Thank you for that. And look, last question to you both. This has been hugely valuable, and I think we could benefit from about 3 hours with you both. But last question to you is around the 3 things that you really recommend that recruitment agencies should be implementing now and as a bare minimum?
Well, I'd say, first thing I would do is look at your homepage of your website, and if it's a list of your services and offerings to your clients, I would change it to be really client focused and really identifying who is your specific client that you want attention from, and talking about their specific problems that you can solve for them first. And then do the same thing on your LinkedIn profile. As recruiters, I see a lot of LinkedIn profiles that look like a resume. You're not trying to get another job, you're trying to win clients. So make your LinkedIn profile more relevant to your clients than it is about you as well. And finally, I'd create an authoritative piece of content focused on your best clients and their biggest problems, and talk about them and really the influence of that over them and how you can solve it.
Excellent, Greg. Thank you. Chris.
So yeah, I've already mentioned the customer intent piece. I would add to that automation. So the future of marketing, the future of all business has got degrees of automation in it. So you want to be looking at both your user experience, your customer, your clients and your candidates, how they're interacting with your brand and what that looks like, and compare it with best practice, because there's a lot of companies that are doing automation really well now. So are you surveying your candidates and clients and seeing how well are we performing, and then trying to translate that into a Google review? Are you sending your contractors that are working an email every month or so saying, hey, how's it going? Is there anything we can do to help? That's all marketing. That's all brand recognition. That's the sort of stuff that's going to get you referrals, because people are going, oh, my recruitment agency is doing this. Have you got a system where you get notified when your contractor's birthday is coming up, so that you can either contact them, or the system even contacts them and says happy birthday? It's minor, but that's going to lead to referrals, but also the more complex side of automation. So, using automation to segment your database, using automation to go and crawl through the candidates and clients on your database, primarily candidates that haven't been spoken to for 6 months, and contacting them and getting them to update their details, and then using that to alert the recruiters. Using automation to push bits of content to them through email, if you're blue collar, maybe text or WhatsApp, to get them to engage with your content and come back to you, using automation so you could see, are my clients active on, if a client's just visited my website, I need a notification to go to my recruiters to say, hey, this client's active. So really look at that piece. That's the direction that marketing's going. That's the way I feel most people need to invest. And it's, yes, you've got to pay for something to do it, but you're not having to put paid channels into Facebook or Google or any of that side of things. Another big one for me, we've already touched on it, but reviews. I would most definitely be making sure you've got a process around reviews. And then to finish off and to link in with what Greg was saying about having big pieces of content there, I think make sure you've actually got a strategy for your marketing, and it ties with your business goals. A strategy is no longer we're going to post content to social media and send the odd email. You've got to have a clearly defined 12 months or even 6 months if with things that are changing so rapidly at the moment. You've got to know this is the project we are doing here, and this is, you mentioned ROI in your points, Tony, but this is the campaign we're going to run, and this is the ROI we're going to see, and this is how we're going to measure it. You've got to have all that documented so you know it's happening, you know who's accountable for it, and it doesn't get forgotten. What happens with marketing is other priorities take over, and because there isn't that strategy, it sort of gets left behind, and you end up with the lowest common denominator, which is stuff going on social media. So have a strategy, try and follow it, and over time you will definitely see results.
Oh, very well put, Chris. Thank you. And look, thank you both very much for sharing so many valuable ideas there. As I said before, we could keep going, and I'm sure there's a lot of people still on the call that would like you to keep going. But we've got to finish up, and I will be sharing both your contact details with everyone that did attend, so that if there's any additional questions that people might want to ask of either of you privately, they can be in touch, and they can review the recording of the presentation as well. But thank you both very much, especially coming in at the last minute and delivering so well. So thank you. And look, thank you to every one of you that has been attending Captain's Table over this year. We've had 10 meetings. Many of you have attended every single one, and really appreciate your support of Captain's Table and the sharing of knowledge. And I hope you agree that we will keep providing you with quality and relevant content. And I think today's session hopefully was a really good example of that. That we'll try and stay very cutting edge and get some really good quality people sharing information with you. So thanks to everyone for attending, and a final thanks to all our sponsors as well. Couldn't be putting this together without you all. So JobAdder, APositive, DigitPro, Ayers Group and William Buck, thank you to your 5 organisations for making Captain's Table possible, and it just keeps building more and more, and we really look forward to working with you all in the new year. Have a really well-deserved break. It's been an incredible year, as you well know, hugely challenging, but it's really taught us a lot, and it's been really exciting from that front. So thank you everybody, and thanks Adele for helping today, and thanks everyone else that's been helping Captain's Table along the way as well. So my very best wishes to you all, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for having us.